a exact opposite is Costello Holford's Aristopia, which is the paradise scenario that assumes this settler in the 1600s in Virginia actually stumbles on a reef made out of solid gold. Yeah, if you can't call that a fantasy scenario, I don't know what you can call a fantasy scenario.
It could happen.
Yes, it could happen. You could stumble on a reef of solid gold in Virginia when we drive back up there. And Aristopia, and Ralph Morton takes this gold and founds a society called Aristopia based on the basic concepts in Thomas More's book called Utopia, which was published in 1516. And it becomes this paradise on earth and turns the U.S. into this city on a hill concept that the Pilgrims had always wanted it to be. Now, it's those two extremes that you see flipping alternate history between. And let's see, skipping forward. Basically, every story of steampunk that takes place in our world is an alternate history. In Bone Shaker, Sherry Priest advanced the Klondike Gold Rush by a good few decades because she needed Seattle to have a population of 40,000 rather than the 5,000 that they actually did have in 1880. In the Parasol Protectorate, vampires and werewolves and ghosts are a part of Victorian life. You know, it assumes that they exist. Alternate history. The Affinity Bridge by George Mann has high Victorian technology that ends up making it an alternate history. And of course, Whitechapel Gods, the crazy gods from outer space didn't actually come down and take over the Whitechapel district of London in the 1800s. And the video that I have here is actually from the show Enterprise, the Star Trek, I guess you could call it a prequel, whatever. And this is it actually has one of the most common alternate history scenarios of Hitler having a conclusion. Won, in essence. Obviously, we know this didn't happen, but the imagination of what the world would have looked like had it happened is what makes alternate history, and that's also what makes steampunk into what it needs to be, that counterfactual style. Questions on alternate history?
Do you think that the steampunk genre has gotten more popular because of the alternate history, and that there's a lot of history buffs out there that kind of have always thought, hey, what if that had happened differently? And now they're seeing that in literature?
Alternate history has been around obviously for a while. I mean, I don't know if it's become popular. I don't know if steampunk has become more popular because of the alternate history. I don't know that anyone can really say for what reason why steampunk has become more popular, but there are people who are fans of history who are thinking, okay, I want to put a steam-powered tank running through London in 1860. What would I need to do in order to make that happen? And that's where the experimentation of alternate history comes in. Anyone else?
I've characterized steampunk as being what would have happened to the steam age if electricity had never taken off. How accurate do you think that is, or is it?
It can be, and it's
because there's more that could be done with steam, but
there's a lot more
cut off.
Yeah, there is a lot more that could be done with steam. I mean, I forget which one it is, but there are a few steampunk works that do still use electricity in a limited sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is.
It looks experimental.
It's very experimental. It hasn't taken off, and it's assuming that the infrastructure of what would become our electronic age that we live in today didn't kind of take hold the way that it did.
Mm-hmm.
Like had Edison not been, well, Edison,
Yes.
what would the world have looked like? What would the 1930s have looked like? The 40s, the 50s?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, in the steampunk that I've read, it shares something with straight science fiction in that often you must take as part of it something that is, at least with the science known now, not possible. The reason you don't have steam-powered planes or even airships is because power-to-weight ratio. You can get it better from a gasoline engine. But in steampunk, you have steam-powered airships. Just as in regular science fiction, as far as we know, nothing can go faster than light. But you have all kinds of faster than light spacecraft, because otherwise you'd be stuck doing generation ship stories. And
Yes.
who wants to be stuck just doing those? So you have to accept something, whether it be some sort of etheric power that is found that allows you to power these things, in order for it to work.
Exactly. You have to change. You have to change reality. That's where the alternate history comes in. And yes, there are some occasions where there's a little bit of hand waving, and it's like this works because I say it works.
Yes.
Honestly, it's like if the characters in your world, if the characters in your novel's world accept that it works, and you're not doing the nod and the wink to your readers, then everyone's going to accept it. Everyone's going to accept it. With the alternate, and that is a good point. You have to accept certain things that are counterfactual, that work in opposition to that work alternately to the way that our world works. Like, we know power to mass ratio works better in gasoline engines versus steam engines. Well, what if it didn't? What if it worked the other way? Okay, there we go. There's your alternate history steampunk.
My other thought was, oh, I'm sorry, is somebody else?
In the back.
Just on a note about the steam-powered airplanes, it's just that we haven't explored technology.
Yeah,
This steam-powered airplanes.
We found that gasoline engines worked well. So okay, there we go. We're done.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't go any further, but now that the physics is there and the technology is slowly getting there.
It's
Getting back to the conversation, my first thought when you guys were talking, it's about suspending logic. But really, it's not even suspending logic, because it's really pushing the limits of logic, what could be, and that's true with many genres besides from science fiction and fantasy. Horror, another big area. Same concept. You're pushing way beyond what's potentially possible. And even into some spiritual type books, same way. You're pushing beyond what is accepted as being logical. So, I think probably the last few years, probably the biggest one is Jay Lake's books.
Yes, mainspring is a good example.
In that world, because that really pushes the limits of what is potentially logical.
Yeah, that's why it's much more accurate to say speculative fiction as opposed to science fiction, because science fiction means that you're still basing things off of what can feasibly happen based on what we know. Speculative fiction as well. If I change X, Y, Z, and double alpha, what does that do to the logical underpinnings of the world?
And those minor changes to accepting
Yes.
logic, get you there, but they don't have to go beyond into, the Terry Pratchett type novels where everything runs on magic. You don't have to know how, it just does, and he doesn't need to explain anything.
Exactly.
But that's what separates the two, really, is
Terry Pratchett
bending
is
logic
actually,
or making your own.
Terry Pratchett is actually an interesting case because he's said in the past that everything he does in his universe is hand waving. It's like you can't map a sense of imagination, is what he says, which he gets away with because he does it consistently, and that's the main point with alternate history, with speculative fiction. If you're consistent with it, if you're consistent and you say that the world runs on clockwork in Mainspring, okay, the world runs on clockwork. If all of a sudden you realize that, wait a minute, there's this one thing that isn't a clock, well then you've broken the illusion. So that's where the alternate history and the speculative fiction, if you make a choice and you keep to that choice, that's what these successful authors have done. They've kept to their choices, whether they're making the counterfactual argument or the steam-powered airplane argument or what have you. All right. Any other points before we move on?